read this story because I think the approach that I want to take with this story is I think these are words the church needs to hear. So as you read these words, look and listen to how Jesus responds, how Jesus approaches the two on this road to Emmaus, and think of it as how the church, the attitude in which the church should approach individuals and folks who are on their journey or on their particular path.
We have people from Slate Speak saying hi.
Hi. I should have dressed up. I feel like I should dress up now that we videoed this. But I'll sport my little LaRue and I'll be happy. Okay. Now on that same day, two of them, now on the same day means the day that Jesus had first risen. So that morning, the women had come and told the disciples the good news. Now on that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. He said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place there in these days?" He asked them, "What things?" They replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since these things had taken place. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels, who said that he was alive." Then he said to them, "Oh, how foolish are you, and how slow to heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory?" Then beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. As they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he were going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it is almost evening, the day is now nearly over." So they went to stay with them. When he was at table with them, he took the bread, blessed it and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking with us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on that road, and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So what I love, I don't know how you can look at any story and not just Google it. And when I look at this picture, I wonder, how did they not know it was Jesus? He's wearing white, and he looks white. Hello, they should just know that it was Jesus. Just kidding. JK. But I do love how Jesus actually, in all these pictures, is always in white. And in all of them, he's almost always talking, which I kind of find to be kind of interesting because when I read this story, when I look at what Jesus is doing or what Jesus is saying, I get a lot of different. I have a different view, I guess. I kind of look at it as like one of those verbatims that you have to do for CPE. So when we're pastors,
CPE?
I know, clinical pastoral education. So when we're going to be ordained, or we're going and making this ministry route in some denominations, I guess all denominations don't require it, right? We're required to do these things called verbatims, where you are in like a clinical setting, sometimes a hospital, sometimes a hospice, whatever you might be in, and you're required to write down like exactly what you said, how you listened, and then at the end reflect on it with a group. And one of the things that when I was reading this story, I was treating it kind of like as verbatim. What I realized was a few things. As Jesus is walking down that road, and as he's meeting these two disciples, he has no idea, I don't think, what he's walking into. Much like when we encounter and when we're talking with people, when we ask that benign question, how are you? Like, hey, how are you? If we really mean it. That's a whole other issue. We don't really know what we're going to get in response. And I think what's interesting in this story, what we get is that Jesus, as he walks into this conversation, he is there and he's ready to accept what he finds. So when he walks into the conversation with these two on the road, he's ready for it. He's ready for whatever it is that he's going to encounter. And what I also noticed was that he asked these open-ended types of questions, right? So when you look at this text, when you see it, majority of the text is him asking two questions and then listening. So he's not like immediately lecturing them. I mean, it would have been easy for him like, after when they said, "Why are you so sad?" and one of them says, "Well, haven't you heard? Aren't you the only one that doesn't know what had taken place?" He could have really easily said, "Oh, I know what the hell they're talking about. Let me just spout off what I did at the end, right? And tell them all about what should have happened and where it should have happened." But he actually meets them where they are and actually really listens. So the image that I like or see Jesus being more as is this, like a traveling companion, right? Someone who is really there with them, like fully present in their journey. I love this picture. I mean, I don't like the white one of Jesus, but I really like how he's making the eye contact. I just like how he's like, it's a little too intense, but I do like how he's really, really intense. I like that he's, that when being present, when he's present with these two, that it's more than just being in the same room. It's more than just being on that same road. That his preoccupations aren't with listening just to respond. He's listening to really listen. He's reading between the lines. He's trying to see and feel where their emotions are and where their hearts are. The two have his complete concentration and attention. He's reading them physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I love this quote by Jim Elliott, "Wherever you are, be all there." And so by being there, meeting them in whatever mood, and being open is a way in which I think Jesus gains their trust, right? So when you're visiting people or when you meet people, they might have a bunch of emotions that surface when you're encountering them and when you meet them. When you go and you say hello to someone. Today I was talking with a colleague, and I said a quick hello. "Hey, how are you?" She said something. I responded back, and then she said something else, and something made me say, "Why did you just say that?" I never normally said to somebody like, "Hey, why did you say that?" But something about what she said and how she responded was kind of off. And then I realized that she had a lot going on. So just by being open and asking open questions, or asking maybe a little bit of a more probing question, kind of getting at what they're chatting about. And then I think Jesus kind of does it well until the end, where he says, "Oh, how foolish you are and how slow you are to believe." I think he was kind of good without judging for a little bit. I do wonder, I mean, it's 7 miles. I wonder if he met them at mile 1 or if he met them at mile 5. How long did he listen to them complain? How long were they bitching and moaning until he chimes in? We don't know. But at the end, he does decide, and he does, go forward and reveal a little bit about what was the purpose of man, with the purpose of Jesus dying, without actually revealing who he is, which is an interesting whole other narrative about how does he tell this story, how does he tell the purpose as a third person participant, not as being that Savior. So my questions that I wanted us to kind of talk a little bit about is about being a listener and how is the church like or unlike Jesus and those that he met on the road, right? Like, how can the church show someone that we are listening? How does the church, big church, not just individual small churches? How can the Christian faith, those followers of Jesus, when I say the church is not a building, it's a people. I love that song. So how can the church show someone or show a group of people that we are listening? It's a bit of a harder question. And don't worry, I know we have issues. What are some ways?
Well, a way would be like, I'm Catholic, so going to a confessional and speaking to a father, that's one way of the church listening.
Yeah. That's good.
So listening to individual petitions.
Yeah.
Show you're listening by how you respond.
Listening what?
You can show you're listening by how you respond.
Okay.
So like I'm listening to you speak. I'm not like, I don't have a phone on me, I don't have anything like, I'm not playing with anything. Like I'm listening, I'm being attentive, something like that. So however you respond, like if you, like for example, if I ask you a question about what you just said, it kind of shows that I'm listening and understanding. So like it was sort of like you're saying, just asking more probing questions. Don't always try to give an answer before you ask further and deeper until they feel that you've heard them. So.
Another way would be in some churches where the pastor would tell you to turn to your neighbor and engage in whatever communication that they were about to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
That's one way to connect to the group, though, or the whole church.
On a grander scale, I guess like after the things that they just shared, church is attempting to cater to the needs of the communities in which they're a part of. Absolutely. Finding specific ways.
Right.
Yeah, I think that shows up and like you said, if you're really listening to your community, then you're involved in those issues where they're getting hit the hardest. So somebody was complaining about, man, I don't feel like my kids getting the best education. Okay, what can we as a group do to help them, help these people get better education? And put them in a position where they feel, where that kid is going to be better off for the long term. So stuff like that shows on a larger level that we're actually listening to the community.
I think churches show that they're listening by including people. So, like when we talk about like communities, like what you're mentioning, I don't think that communities are silent. I think that communities are constantly voicing their opinions and the way they feel in various different ways. And I think when a church includes those voices in the church and responds to them, that's how they show they're listening to them. When they bring people in and show them that they're important.
Rather than just using them as tokens
Right.
in their various committees to be.
Or as like what would you call it, a sermon illustration. I once saw this homeless man while I was out walking. Okay, where is he? Why isn't he here?
Right. When has the church listened well? And that's a big capital C. Like we often say, or things you hear well, things you often hear is like, and we talked about it, I think a little bit, Jason, at our Missional Voices pre-gathering, right? What you say on social media and what you don't say on social media is still saying something, right? So even when just as much. Saying something. So, when has the church actually listened well, do you think, if you're thinking of late or recently to maybe any topics or places? Can you think of one?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So when has the church listened well? So, so like the big church, the church. So, like Jesus, rather than just listening to respond, you felt like the church actually understood the issue, and then was with the people in their plight or place, and didn't use them as a sermon illustration.
I'm really trying. I'm sorry. I'm really trying to think of the situation.
Yeah.
But I'm really struggling because the people that I've engaged with recently, they left the church because they felt like the church doesn't get it, or they just feel like the church is all in all a waste of time. Because I mean, they feel like, man, I'm still in my same situation, so I don't understand why I'm going to church anyway. Why am I a part of this? So they just leave. So, I mean, I'm really trying to figure out a situation where I feel like, yeah, we really listened well and we responded well. I think, I don't think it's like totally foreign to us. Or else I wouldn't be in church. I wouldn't be a part of the church if I didn't feel like people were like listening, right? I don't think I ever would have. Yeah, I would have never seen God if like somebody didn't, show me that within the community. But that's just me. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know that I can think of. I think I have an easier time thinking of like individual people who push the church, and then the church moved.
Okay, so share one of those.
Like Desmond Tutu. Like I feel like he was a church leader who saw, things that were happening and moved the church. And I think MLK was like that. And I think Malcolm X was like that with the Nation of Islam. That he pushed the church body, the congregation in a direction, and then the church responded favorably or unfavorably. But I can't think of a time. Maybe the Quakers are an example of when like a bunch of church leaders got together and were like, okay, this is wrong. And in that case, it was slavery. But
right.
By and large, I think it's mostly individuals that push the group.
My Presbyterian heritage was when we at our last GA, made the decision to divest. What? Oh, General Assembly. So it's kind of like, your big, I don't know, the Episcopal Church, whatever they call their big gatherings. What do they call them? I don't know. Gatherings. What do the Lutherans call your big gatherings? Churchwides. So at our GA, which was also momentous, right, because we elected 2 co-moderators who are both women, which was awesome, and one is a person of color and one is a middle-aged white woman, which I think are both equally awesome. And so, but at this GA, there was a decision to divest from companies that do business in Israel. So like Caterpillar, Xerox, I'm trying to think of all the ones. And what? Yep. It was a huge issue for a lot of our folks. Folks got more pissed off about that than they did about anything that came up with gay marriage, the ordination it was a big issue. We lost a lot. We had a lot of church members who left individual churches, and some of our denominational churches pulling out over the issue.
So back up a little bit. So was it a group of people that got together and was like, hey, this is a bad idea, or was it one person who kind of like?
I'm not sure how. So we all move. It's like. So the PCUSA is much like our whole government in the sense that like someone presents an amendment or a bill, and then it goes before a certain amount of a committee, and then it has to go back and get voted. It has to have enough supporters in order to make it to the votes, and then they all have to, so once it gets passed in GA, then it comes all back and you have to vote on it in individual presbyteries. I mean, it's a whole rigmarole to actually get anything implemented in the PCUSA. It's amazing we actually get anything passed. But it starts off as a small cluster of people, which is the kind of the cool thing, like, right? You can do anything you want in the Presbyterian Church, like, as long as you have a cluster, and then they can implement bigger change. But listening well doesn't always mean that you're going to be well liked, right? If you're a good listener and you respond, it doesn't mean that things that you say and things that you listen to is going to make you popular. I think was kind of where I was going with that illustration. Some people say, oh, if you're a good listener, you must be liked. Well, it depends on how much you turn around and you say that truth back to the person, right? If you have a good therapist, I don't think you always really like that therapist a lot, right? I mean, right? Because they're getting some good probing and they ask some really good questions and they piss you off a bit because they're pointing it back at you and really making you think about your own actions. And as a church, I think that is what we're kind of called to do. I think we're called to reflect upon ourselves and ask ourselves some of those deeper questions and piss ourselves off a little bit and stir ourselves up a little bit. Why the hell are we doing what we're always doing? So then I think also, though, is, being a little empathetic, right? How is it, I don't think we shouldn't always be alienating everyone on the margins. I think you need to also be trying to figuring out ways to include people. Otherwise, we'll have even more splintering and branching, and I'm not sure if that's what exactly we're called to do. But how and where and with what issues can we do better? I know our three denominations, Episcopal, Lutheran, and Presbyterian, which we refer to a lot, have dealt differently with different issues. We have different people in our own denominations that fall in different sides of particular lines of issues. But how can the church do better with addressing these issues?
I think listening to the pain of people. So when it comes to police brutality or workers' rights, immigration, refugees, I think if the church was listening to the neighborhood and listening to the people, then it would be advocating in certain ways. And oftentimes that just doesn't happen, or we see Black Lives Matter, or we see different issues that are happening out in the streets. It's not our problem or not our issue, and so we stay in our buildings, stay in our sanctuaries, and don't do anything.
Say where it's safe.
I definitely agree with you on that. I would say that beyond that is it just being involved. Like seriously, like, and I'm gonna specify something for not for the global church, but for a particular section. For the churches I'm acquainted with and the people that I know, the Black church, I think that for us, listening is like being involved and being autonomous. For those of us that are aware and a part of the Black church, not saying that we do anything, just in general, we like doing something. All I'm saying is that I think that for our own issues, we should be on the forefront of those issues. We should be trying to solve those issues. And I think that for us, because a lot of times I think there's a lot of times I think for the Black church, people feel like there's a disconnect between them and the actual community. And I know that, I've seen that from experience and from talking to people. So for our issues, for police brutality, I'd say, look, you have to be more involved with the police. No matter how much no matter how much we don't like it, we have to be more involved in an organized fashion with addressing like the mentality, the situations, the systems in place. We have to be more vigilant as a group. And that's not to distinguish anybody else who would like to help. It's just, I think that Black people should definitely for those of us that are educated, and we should be educating each other and being a part of solving those issues. Point blank period.
It's not a quick fix, right? None of this is a quick fix. I mean, I think that's why, again, all the way Jesus says, this one's freaky, right? They're all kind of freaky. But it takes, look at this one, like, is he having an orgasm when he's doing that? Like, what is that? Like, what is that? Anyway,
What's he doing with that bread?
I don't know. That's what I was. When I saw it, I had to put it up just because it was killing me. But the thing is that it takes time, right? Meals back in the day were not going through McDonald's. Meals took time to prepare, and it took time to eat. It wasn't a quick thing. Listening and being in a relationship is not a quick process. Jesus spent time with those that he valued, getting to know and listening to them. And if we as a congregation or we as a church, capital C, really want to understand the people and understand our communities, then we need to spend the time. We need to do the work. Sitting down, breaking bread, and being in a relationship. I do always wonder, like, who is that additional face? Like, who is that random person? It's kind of fun. Anyway, so that's kind of like my whole little spiel. I think there's a lot to learn through all of Jesus's interactions, especially as the church. But ultimately, I think there's no quick fixes. I think what it comes down for me, and reading this story in particular, is that it was a long relationship. Walking with someone for 7 miles it takes time. 7 miles is not a jaunt, and then eating a meal is not quick. But what's amazing is even after spending all that time with Jesus and after taking that 7-mile walk, just like that, they immediately get up and they run their butts all the way back to share the news.